Well, welcome back to Modeling Time with me, Brian Banna. This build that I'm going to be working on, or I basically already started it, but I didn't get so far into it that I can't start a video series on it. So I've decided to do that. Start a video series on building a Atlas C425. I've never done a really good high-end model of an Alco. I've always been working on EMDs, and EMDs are fun because there's lots of parts out there for them. But there's a challenge to Alcos because there's not a lot of parts out there for them. And the models that we have to work from, I think they need a little bit of work. So I thought this would be a good series to bring Alcos to light and spotlight them. So let me give you an idea of where I am, what I'm working on, and we can start from there. So let me get the camera set up and I'll go over a few things and highlight a few things and let you know a few things that you might not know about the Atlas model, what you can do to it, and things like that. So let me get the camera set up and we'll get right to this. All right, excuse the mess on my bench. I've been working on a lot of stuff, and this project has kind of steamrolled into something a little bit more than I had planned it to be. It's not necessarily that slippery slope thing that people like to say, but more or less I want to see a little bit more detail than what I'm coming across. Slippery slope thing doesn't really happen with me because I just like the detail work, and sometimes I don't do the detail work, like on freight cars, because I just want to get the freight cars done. But locomotives are pretty much the spotlight of things, and although I can do some basic detailing on this project, my first 4-axle Alco, I want to make it really look good. And I want it to be, have some really cool details that people really don't see on Alco models. So let me go over what I've done. Originally, as you can see, the frame is painted black. I did start weathering it. You can't really see it because it was just going to be a basic frame. The trucks weren't going to have any detail on them, and I was just going to weather it and have fun with it. But, the thing about working on locomotives with me is that's what I do. And doing the detail work and the design work, I was thinking, wow, the design work, I'm just getting so tired of doing that and having to design everything and blah, 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 blah. Well, that's what I do, and I enjoy that. And as much as I tried to get away from it, it just doesn't work for me. Now, freight cars are easy for me to do that way because I just want to get them done and have a nice looking weathered train. If I were to detail on my freight cars, I would never have a train. So, but the locomotives I'm going to do, and I think this project you guys are going to really like. Now, let me touch base on the SD45 projects real quick. I have the parts for them. I just don't have the motivation factor yet. So when I get that back, I'll get back on the SD45s. But I really have a motivation factor for this model and a C424, another C425, and an RS11. So I want a 4-unit set for my railroad. So, getting back to what I was doing. So again, the frame was just going to be basic. I did the video on how I did the draft gearboxes. Those are going to be redone, although I'll use the same mounting points and such. And on the underside of the frame, you can see I have these, on the other side of the sill unit, you can see that I already have these blocks glued in, which I will use this sill unit. What I'm going to try to do is cut this this coupler pocket off. I may have to lose my coupler lift bars, but that's okay. I can remake them. And I have the design for what a C424, 425 draft gearbox looks like. So I want to put that on there. So we'll get to that much later. Right now, I'm working on the trucks and the frame. What I found out, let me step back. So I originally cut the frame rail in it. You can see it right there. I filled in all the gaps and everything so I could cut along there and have a solid looking frame. Because the way that the shell and the deck will be held onto the frame is through these screws and then through the screw in there. And also the shell clips down through the sill, and it clips into the frame here, 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 and here. So we don't have to worry about that. But while I was doing this, I thought, okay, I'll just cut that in there. So I cut that in there. I go, that'll look okay. And then I was designing the truck retainer clips. And let me show you what I mean. This part of the truck, let me zoom in on here. And I'll show you, I've detailed the trucks already. I need to do a little bit more, so we'll go over that too. There we go. All right. So, this detail on the truck, right here, that's the truck retainer. Now, coming off the frame, it'll have, coming off the bottom of the jack pad support, it'll have this thing that has these gussets in it, and on the back side of it, or the inside of it, there's a hook. Now, that hook goes into a bracket that's welded to the top of the truck. So if the locomotive derails, the truck won't fall off. It'll be caught by that hook. So that's the detailed part that I'm designing right now. Now, while I was doing that, this portion where you see the 3 ribs, those are the gussets for the part that's bolted to the bottom of the jack pad. Now, while I was looking at that, I put this truck up underneath the frame, and there was quite a bit of distance between the top, up under the frame there. There was quite a bit of difference or space between the bottom of the frame and the top of the truck, where the truck was. And so designing that little, that keeper, not the bracket that's on top of the truck, but the part that has a hook in it, I was like, there's an awful lot of distance between this frame, the bottom of the frame, and the top of the truck. So I started looking at prototype photos. I've never been able to get up, to measure a C424 or 425. So I have to use photos to gauge what I'm working on and to scale from and things like that and get proportional information. Well, it appears from a very good photograph that I found on the internet, a really big one, that, let me zoom out here. I'm also having a fuel tank made, so there'll be a new fuel tank. But anyways, the bottom of this fuel tank, not the stepped portion, but the bottom of this fuel tank, from the photographs that I've looked at, should be pretty much even with the bottom of the slack adjuster, the brake slack adjuster. So I measured the Atlas model, and there's a 60 thousandths difference. So I'm thinking, I'm wondering something. So I dropped this tank 60 thousandths, and it looked much better. I measured the distance, an additional 60 thousandths from the bottom of this frame to the top of the truck side frame, and that's where everything was missing. So I was like, wow, this model can look much better. Because if you look at prototype photos, there's a big old frame piece right here between the top of the truck side frame and the underside of the frame. There's a big old long I-beam looking thing in there that doesn't get represented by the Atlas frame. So it's really wide in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in the mill, and I'm going to cut this rail off that I already have, and I'm going to cut this rail off. Now my concern is the thickness at this point right here. This is the thinnest point, but because I have an L section, that should support it fairly well. What I'm going to do is like I said, I'm going to cut that rail off, and I'm going to cut this rail off. Then I'm going to glue a piece of 60 thousandths styrene here, piece of 60 thousandths styrene here, and then I'll put styrene block here and a styrene block in here on both sides. Glue that all in. I'll probably cut a notch out in here so that the draft gearboxes can fit in there, because like I said, I'm going to be doing new draft gearboxes, but it'll still have the same footprint. So that'll just drop right in real nicely, and I don't have to worry about redesigning that. And I'll put blocks in here to finish up this edge to the inside of the step well and stuff. And then I can glue a frame rail on with styrene along here. that will give me the width or the height of that frame. It'll make it look much, much better. Now doing the jack pads is going to be a little compromising. I'll have to do some compromise because the width of the frame is definitely not the width of a prototype frame. So I'm going to have to do some compromises and just try to make it look right with the angle of the jack pad support and stuff like that. But at least that detail will be in there. And so dropping all this 60 thousandths, I think is going to give it a really, really good look. So let's go get this into the mill and get that frame rail cut off. Go. All right, so I do have some catching up to do on this project because I was building stuff, and then I go back and I have to do some more detailing, cut some stuff off, and you know, that kind of stuff. Now, if I would have started from the very beginning, I would already have this done with, you know, if I would have started from the very beginning with the idea of what I wanted to do properly, I would have this done already. So I don't have a fixture for this one like I do other frames, but I made a fixture, and it was a very easy one. So I had a long stick of aluminum, so I cut it to length, squared up the ends and all that stuff. And then what I need to do is I need to fill in this area here so it's even with this, because if I put this into the vise like this and I tighten the vise down, it's going to flex between these 2 points. So, you know, this part will flex in a little bit, ever so little, but it'll still cause this not to be straight. So I made this piece of, or I cut this piece of brass. It fits in here right nicely. And now if I get out, I think it's, whoop, almost tipped my camera over. I'm pretty clumsy most of the time. My wife says I'm a clown. So I get out this parallel. I think that's the right one. Let me drop it in here. Yes, that's the right one. Okay, well, you see the brass block fell down in there. I need to hold that up here while I do that. I can push it down later. Push that up against it. Get the vise tightened down. Hope this is the right notch to put it in. Let me see. Yes, it is. Okay, so now let me push this piece of brass down in there a little bit. There we go. There we go. I need it on both parts of the frame. Push my parallel up against the frame. Loosen that, press it down, finger tighten it, and then give it a good cinching. There we go. Now everything's tight in here. Now when I get down to here for milling, I just push up against the bolster, which pushes up against this piece, and it won't chatter. It doesn't chatter as it is right now, but I just want to make sure that it won't chatter. So I'll push that up against it. And when it gets on this end, I'll push up against it there. So now when I cut this, I'm going to use a good sharp milling bit. I have some roughing bits that I use for stuff, but when I do stuff like this, I want to make sure that I have a good sharp bit. So, let me get this down here. And everything should be straight in there. If my parallel's tight, yep, it's tight going back and forth. I can pull it this way because this tapers, but if it's up against the frame and everything, I try to move it, it's tight. So everything should be level and straight. So we bring this down, you bring it all the way down to this end. Now, when I get down to about here, you're going to hear the vise squeak. That's because there's a dry spot in the screw and I need to oil it. But I'm lazy sometimes and I don't really want to do that. So let's get this over here. Now it's going to get noisy. Okay, I'm not going to make the full cut or full depth cut. I'll probably take about 2, maybe 3 passes to get it down even where the bottom of the frame is, or the side of the frame is. Well, and real quick, one of the tips, when you have an open side to your frame like this, you want to make your cuts this way so that the bit is spinning into the frame. If it spins away from the frame and it catches, it'll pull this frame away. So you want to make sure your bit is cutting towards the frame and not away from the frame. So it's spinning in a clockwise direction, but if it catches anything, it'll push this way. Okay, so there's something wrong here. I got to figure out where the setup issue is. The difference between the depth of cut here and here, this end is almost touching the inside, or the bottom or the side of the frame. This end is up about, let me see, probably about 20 thousandths, and this one's up probably about almost 10 thousandths. So I need to figure out what's going on here. If this is in fact straight, and when I did the first cut, something was different. So let me do some investigation, and I'll let you know what I find so that we can finish this cut. Okay, well, I don't know what happened or why this end is slightly lower than this end, but I measured from the top surface here. The first thing I did is I took a level and I put it on the top surface here. Then I put it on the surface over here. Then I put it on the surface of the vise. Then I put it on the surface of this block. Then I put it on the surface of the frame on the fuel tank part. And then I put it on the surface of here. So the deck, the vise, the block, and the fuel tank all measured out level with the bubble in exactly the same spot. So that worked out well. Then I used a scale and I measured from the surface of the deck on the mill to this point right here, this surface right here, on both sides, and they turned out exactly the same. I measured from the deck of the mill to this surface right here where the truck goes through the frame, and the same on the other side. They turned out exactly the same. So I'm going to continue cutting, and what I'll do is when I reach this face, this surface face here, I'll see what happens when I go all the way down. So I have another frame in case I screw this one up. So let's continue with this milling. Something must have happened when I originally cut this. I don't know what, but when I cut that bevel off, something must have happened with the way the frame was in the vise. Can't figure it out, but everything seems to line up, so let's give it another go. Since I'm cutting up against this top portion or the underside of the frame here, so I'm making two cuts at once. It looks pretty good on both ends. Let me bring it down this side. All right, well, visually, the amount that sticks up on this end right here looks exactly the same as on this end. So everything should be perfect all the way across. Now what I'm probably going to do is go a little bit deeper and bring this cut down to this surface right here. I think I'll be okay. with this point here because I've got it in an L shape, which gives it strength. It'll still be somewhat of a weak point, but there's not a lot of weight sitting on this end, and any pulling power is through it, so this shouldn't flex at all. Plus this is still about 40 thousandths thick here, so I think I'll be okay. I do a lot of experimenting, and I have destroyed my share of frames through my 15 or so years of modeling in HO. Alright, so that finishes cutting that. I'm just going to go back and forth a couple times. When I go back and you see it bringing off more material, it's not material off this face down here, it's a material off the underside of the frame. Because when you do climb milling, it doesn't fully cut that in. So there's still a little bit of material, so that when you cut against it, it'll take it off. So I don't know why that is. I don't know much about machining other than this cuts that. So that's basically it. So the side of this frame, can't really see it because the mill's in the way, but I don't want to move this yet. But the side of this frame is about even, actually it is, it's even with the outside of the fuel tank weight. So that'll give me a good depth to my frame rail. And I think it's going to look pretty good when I add the 40 or the 60 thousandths back into the bottom of this thing. So let me go ahead and finish cutting that. I have to do the other side, and that will take care of cutting this frame so that I can glue the 60 thousandths on the bottom. I got to go ahead and grit blast all this paint off and everything, and then I'll be able to glue everything on. All right, so the frame's done being cut, so I've got it cut here and as well on the other side, and as you can see, I've grit blasted all the paint off of it. So, and the other cut that I've done is right here and right here. Now I did that before I started this video, and that is just to level off the bottom of the frame so that when I put the fuel tank on, this isn't the fuel tank I'll be using. I've got a 3D printed one coming. It's a little bit longer. This tank isn't the right size, but as you can see, it fits over that now so that there's no bulge coming off of the frame there. So the next step is to cut the 60 thousandths pieces and put them here. I'm not going to do that on the video. It's very simple. I'm just going to cut a rectangle of 60 thousandths styrene. I'm going to glue it to the bottom here, and then I'm going to trim the edges. I'm going to glue it to the bottom here, and I'm going to trim the edges the same way that you saw how I cut the sides down. And that way everything will be squared up, and then I can put the frame rail on, and I'll put that on video. But when you see this frame again, or when I do the next video, you'll see the 60 thousandths glued along the bottom. So I hope you'll join me for the next video, and if you made it through this one, thank you very much.